Welcome and settle in. Imagine yourself stepping quietly into a softly lit room designed for rest. A room where the air is cool and the walls are calm, where the clock does not press on you and nothing expects you to hurry. You've arrived at a gentle edge of the evening, in a sleep lab where the hum of the vents is low, the screens are dim, and the world outside slows enough for you to notice the smallest patterns as inside yourself. This is a night devoted to watching motion that is smaller than a whisper, a night of counting softness, the quiet count of actigraphy. As you get comfortable, if you enjoy drifting off to this kind of slow science, feel free to like this video and subscribe. And if you want a pathway into more calm topics while you rest, the playlist link in the description is there for you to follow as you float. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? You find yourself sinking into a chair that gives and then supports. The fabric, a gentle, textured weave under your fingertips. The lab is unassuming, not theatrical or bright, but kind, with cables gathered neatly, a small stand with a plant that seems to rest as well, and instruments whose little indicators glow like distant cabins across a foggy lake. The carpet exhales a faint, clean scent, like paper left in the shade. Somewhere, a clock ticks very softly, but even that sound seems to come from far away, as if it has put itself under a blanket. On the table, there is a band. It looks like a watch, light and unthreatening, with a strap that doesn't bite the skin. It is an actigraph. You can imagine placing it on your wrist the way you might smooth a sleeve. It does not pinch. It does not buzz or flash or remind you of anything urgent. Inside it is a sensor that listens not with ears, but with the quiet attention of physics. It senses acceleration, tiny changes in movement that add up to the story of your night. It feels the gravitation that gives weight to your hand, and it feels the little arcs your fingers make as you turn a page or scratch an eyebrow or adjust your pillow. The device does not know thought or emotion. It knows the gentle sum of motion, second by second, and later it will translate that into something we can read, something we can cradle inside our understanding of sleep. The lab team speaks softly, and their movements are ordinary and reassuring. Their hands move in slow arcs. One of them checks the battery, a silent glance at a small icon, then closes the little port door the way you might close a book you don't want to disturb. Another checks the time synchronization, ensuring that when the day slips into night on your wrist, it does so in step with the clocks on the wall, and the time in the data file, and the quiet midnight that arrives outside the window. They move around you in kindness, as if to say that even if you do nothing, science will simply watch, and it will not ask you to perform. The actigraph is light. If you slip it onto your wrist now, you notice it for a moment, then it fades and becomes part of your evening. It has a small accelerometer inside, and though it can measure changes very quickly, the way your heartbeat has a quick and then an easy phase, the device is not in a rush to report. It stores these changes, these small accelerations, and gently pulls them into blocks of time. A few seconds of stillness, a few seconds of tiny motion, like the ripple of a sheet settling, a few seconds more. Then it gathers the little sums into something that can be read as a series of counts for each block, known as an epoch. the way a librarian returns to her desk with a stack of slim volumes, each one holding a minute or 30 seconds or 15 seconds of your night. The gentle rhythm continues. You notice the edge of the strap. It is not abrasive. It is like the hem of a soft shirt. You slide a fingertip along it and feel cloth that has one purpose: to hold this tiny listener close enough to your pulse of motion to be accurate and loose enough that you forget it. The face of the device does not glow unless asked, and tonight no one is asking. This is a night of dimness and patience. The only light you see is the kind of light that does not bother sleepers. A trace of amber under a shelf, the suggestion of numerals behind a shade, the angled glimmer of a power strip deep under the desk. In the corner, there is a small refrigerator with a modest hum, a reminder that even in a room like this, there are machines doing small jobs as the night unfolds. A nurse checks a logbook and notes the time. The paper feels smooth and the pen glides almost soundlessly. Throughout the lab, time is kept with more court than you would ever need for daily life. Not because anyone is hurrying, but because good timing makes everything slow down in the right way. When midnight arrives, the time on your wrist matches the time of the room, and when your breath deepens and your hand slackens, the actigraph's counts begin to soften in step with you. Imagine yourself lying back now. The bed is simple and forgiving. Your head meets the pillow, and the pillow yields. The blanket is a soft weight. Breathing out warms the space before your lips, and breathing in draws in air that smells faintly like clean cotton. Somewhere inside, a part of you that measures and evaluates begins to slow its stride. The device on your wrist waits like a patient note-taker, and the first entries are unremarkable things. A few movements to get comfortable, the smooth sweep of your hand to adjust the sheet, and small shift as you choose a good angle for your neck. The counts rise a little, and this is expected. Then you become still for a stretch, and the values on the silent page become lower, a whisper of motion. You might have heard that sleep is recorded in many ways. There is the full array of sensors that record the waves in the brain, the breath, the oxygen, the posture. But tonight, we pay attention to the story that movement tells. There is a certain quiet beauty to learning about rest from the times we do not move or move only lightly, and how those still moments create a pattern across the hours. While actigraphy cannot say exactly whether you are in a particular stage of sleep, it has an easy honesty to it. It knows how stillness grows and when motion interrupts and then fades again. It listens for rest-wake cycles through days and nights, for the semicircles of activity that hold morning and afternoon in their palms, and for the gentle trench of the night where the body's tasks become inward. In these moments, the counts are collected. They are so modest in their per-second pace that they feel like distant crickets under a window, counting out the cadence of a summer night. Each count comes from a tiny change in acceleration, measured not along one line, but along three axes, like three hushed observers looking in three directions. The device combines these to a vector, then decides how much movement took place in that brief slice. Was it a stillness that is nearly pure? Was it a small shift, too small to be a waking task? Was it a larger motion, the kind that means you turned over? Each slice is placed into the little book of the night. Elsewhere in the lab, a screen displays nothing dramatic. It shows rows of numbers that change slowly. The scientists know there are choices to make about these numbers. How long an epoch should be, whether 30 seconds suits you better than a minute, because your movements are delicate and your rest is lightly punctuated, or whether a minute smooths away little shivers of motion to leave only the broad shape of sleep. There are algorithms with tidy names that translate actigraphy counts into the probability that you were asleep or awake in each epoch. Seda, Cole Kripke, and others like them were built from careful comparisons between motion and fuller studies of the night, and they each have a way of whispering, in their own dialect of calm math, that this quiet likely meant sleep, and this cluster of movement likely meant wakefulness. The gentle rhythm continues. Before the night, the team asked you for your planned bedtime and wake time, not as a test, simply to write it down. That helps the interpretation later, creating a frame for the picture that your wrist will paint. They might have asked you to press a little button when you turn out the light, a small marker that places a pin in the map of time. Pressing it is like pinching a page to dog-ear it. It leaves a soft sign. Even if you forgot, the shape of your movement will still tell its tale. Sleep usually arrives as a gentle slope. You don't always drop, you drift. A wave of stillness grows like a tide that sees the shore and moves forward with patience. Then there might be a small, wakeful crest as you notice a thought at the edge of you. The counts lift a little and then settle again. Imagine the lab's ceiling above you, plain and safe, as if it is a sky without weather. You feel your chest rising and falling. The debatable day outside has faded into this room where arguments are unnecessary. The night staff talk in low voices the way librarians talk near old books. Their job is to watch without intruding. In the next room, one of them adjusts a screen's brightness down a notch again out of courtesy to those whose bodies are suggestion sensitive even through the walls. They pour a cup of tea and wrap their hands around it. When they walk back to their desk, they step on the softer part of the carpet, where their footfall is a little quieter. They have practiced this gentle choreography, and it helps the whole place feel like a song in a slow tempo. The device on your wrist has a circuit for light. Though tonight the lab is dim, this sensor will still note the difference between the halo of the evening lamp and the deeper dark after lights out. Later, when the data are read, the change in light will point toward the time when your body expected rest. In daily life, this sensor helps the researchers see how daylight shapes your rhythm, and they call those outer cues Zeitgebers, time givers, light meals, social moments. Your body listens to these cues and keeps a 60,000 strong system of clocks steady, with one clock deep inside a small place near the center of your brain, marking roughly 24 hours and a little. Actigraphy lets us read how well that internal clock holds its line, the way a musician keeps time when everyone else plays around them. The gentle rhythm continues. Under your blanket, you curl your toes, then let them lengthen. The device notes the small act, but this is a quiet night, so the note it takes is barely more than a dot. Your wrist relaxes. The hand that stirred earlier is now heavy, and the fingers are slightly open. All of that has a signature in motion. Even in sleep, you move sometimes, but the quality is different. It is unhurried, with fewer complete arcs of the hand, and a quieter return to stillness after each change of posture. The researchers know this, not because they stared at you, but because they watched years of traces in motion and saw how the patterns settle when a person is resting. When they later draw the line of your night, it will not be jagged, it will be lazy and forgiving, with small hills and dells that mean the blanket slid, or you breathed a little deeper, or a dream drew a shape behind your eyelids and your body sketched it almost without moving at all. If you imagine the counts flowing into a page, you can picture a graph where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is not height but quietness, where higher means more movement and lower means less. For much of the night, the line drifts low, like a ribbon near the floor, weaving through a landscape of hush. There is a section where the line rises a bit repeatedly, perhaps every 90 minutes or so, reflecting an ultradian rhythm, the repeating cycle between deeper and lighter sleep, and perhaps the gentle kicks of a dream phase when your eyes are more active beneath your lids. Even then, movement need not be big. It may be delicate. The actigraph does not claim to see the dream, but it may glimpse the way the body acknowledges it. In another room, the quiet count continues in many other little bands, each belonging to someone with a different kind of day. A student whose lectures make late afternoons her wakeful time. A baker who knows that 3 in the morning is not a mystery. A nurse whose schedule taps gently across the week like rain on alternating windows. Each one carries a rhythm. Actigraphy is particularly good at revealing these rhythms across days, showing how consistent or variable the cycles are. In daily life, you might wake early on one day and late on another, with bedtimes shifting like mild tides. The analysis will later compute things with names that sound like they belong in a meadow. Interdaily stability and intradaily variability. These simply describe how strongly your rhythm ties itself day to day, and how much your wake and rest are clumped smoothly or scattered. You don't have to think about those terms. It is enough to know that the lines drawn by your wrist can show whether your days are almost always the same song or a gentle collection of variations on a theme. Close your eyes for a moment in this imagined room. Your breath is a soft metronome that doesn't insist. Between each breath, there is a pause where nothing is required of you. In that pause, the device continues to be patient. In the way that rain gathers in a barrel even when you don't see each drop, the counts gather during stillness, which is to say, they mostly gather zeros. There is a quiet pride in zeros. In actigraphy, zeros do not mean nothing happened. They mean stillness was present, and stillness can be informative and nourishing. The device will mark these zeros and low numbers in sequence, and later an algorithm will slowly pass across them, using a small window of neighboring epochs to decide whether a given minute was part of the leap. The math is gentle, weighted toward the idea that if many minutes around this one are quiet, then this one was probably quiet for the same reason. Some versions of the analysis apply a threshold. If the counts are below that threshold and the surrounding minutes are also subdued, then the epoch is labeled as sleep. If the counts rise above it in several nearby minutes, perhaps because you sat up to take a sip of water or turned over more than once, the algorithm may mark that as wakefulness, tiny islands set within the sea of rest. The sea analogy is soft and helpful here, just as not every wave said storm and not every lull said calm. not every count means the same thing. That is why the night is broken into manageable pieces, and why they are read with context. The gentle rhythm continues. The staff member reads a note that tomorrow the analysis will include sleep latency, the time from lights out to the first sustained stretch of sleep, not to judge you, only to understand where your friction points are. Sleep efficiency will be computed, the proportion of the night spent in sleep compared with the time spent in bed, and perhaps a fragmentation index that describes how often movement chopped the night into pieces. When you are well, the index is low and the night is smooth. When your days are hectic or your environment is lively, the index grows. Seeing it on a page can help you shape your evenings. A single night is a story. Many nights together form a landscape. You can mark where the hills rose and where the meadow widened. Imagine the weeks that lead to this night. You spent days with the band on your wrist as you walked through light and shade. In the morning, light at the window taught your inner clock that the day had begun. Your actigraph sensed the light and noticed your wrist's busy angle as you stirred coffee or scrolled a page. Midday brought higher counts as you reached and carried and lived through the hours. Late afternoon saw a small plateau. Evening softened the pattern again, and when you sat quietly to read, the counts lost their stride and settled into the slow roll that precedes sleep. Wearing the device across many days helps scientists read the shape of your rest activity cycles, not just the sharp line of one night. They can gently advise whether your morning light is strong enough, whether your evenings might be improved by lower light, or whether naps are nibbling at nighttime. Again, not to command you, but to provide a mirror that is easy to look into and not harsh. You move your elbow on the sheet. The fabric makes a sound like breath through a reed. The monitors in other rooms notice the timestamp. The time server that keeps all clocks aligned with universal time has a little life of its own tonight, quietly ensuring that if someone later looks at the stories of different wrists, they can line them up precisely, overlaying them if they choose, tracing the average curve, the standard shape. This is not a place of averages, though. The team knows that your rhythm is yours. The device doesn't demand that you match a template. It records what is. And in the morning, the quiet staff will offer you a printout or a small image file, a simple plot where your night is a soft stream full of small ripples, hinting at how to support your rest. As your breath deepens, you can picture the algorithms folding over your data like blankets. There are those with names familiar to people who study sleep across communities. Cole Kripke is one that uses a set of weights around each minute, giving a little influence to the minutes before and after to decide your state in this minute. Imagine rubbing a charcoal stick across paper and then smudging gently with your fingertip to bring out the shape. Sade's approach, too, looks at a window and considers how the counts form a pattern. Not only their simple height, others exist, refined and tested, and their differences are like the differences between two people who whisper the same sentence with slightly different breath. The sentence is, "You were probably sleeping here." The gentle rhythm continues. The device also remembers times when it was not on your wrist. If, during the day, you removed it for a shower or a chore, the pattern of zeros might be too perfect, too long, and unpunctuated. Non-wear detection lingers quietly in the background. It looks for long strings of zero counts with light and temperature clues and sets them aside so that your day is not mistaken for a very long, very perfect nap. In the lab tonight, the device is content. It is on your wrist. Its temperature is near skin. Its light readings are low. It understands that this is where that soft certainty allows the night to be interpreted without confusion. Some actigraphs measure more than motion and light. Some record skin temperature lightly, an outer echo of the inner curves that keep you in time. As the night deepens, your core temperature dips, and skin temperature at your extremities may rise as blood moves outward to help you cool. This rhythm, too, is part of sleep's quiet logic. The natural drift can be seen over weeks with actigraphy, showing a slow wave that repeats each day. In circadian medicine, this wave helps align recommendations. To see your rhythm is to be gentle with it. You may imagine that recommendation delivered like warm tea rather than strong coffee. In the morning, light. In the evening, dimness. In the hours before bed, routines that signal softness. Your breathing finds a new steady. The room is nearly still. Perhaps you notice the slight scent of the cleaner used earlier, notes of something faintly citrus, but it is softened by night air, becoming the olfactory equivalent of a washed stone. The sheets are cool where your heel presses, and the area under your shoulder is warmer now, a contour formed by your presence. The device listens. The counts dip and rise lazily. When you dream later, your fingers might twitch. The device will notice, but gently, and the analysis will treat it as a small ripple, not a crash. Later, when the data flow to a computer, a long ribbon of numbers comes alive. The analyst smooths it a little to see the larger flow. They mark lights out, either from your button press or from a drop in the light sensor. They mark sleep onset when the counts become low enough, long enough. They mark wake after sleep onset, the small bits of wakefulness in the night. They mark the final awakening and rise time. They calculate sleep duration from onset to final awakening minus wake after sleep onset. They compute efficiency. They note latency. The page fills with a gentle summary. Your night's contour, not a verdict. If tomorrow's a day when recommendations are offered, they will be offered as possibilities. A bit more light as you start the day. A habit in the evening that you can connect with rest. Perhaps an earlier bedtime if your natural rhythm seems to want that. Or a slight adjustment if work or school has asked you to become an early or a late chronotype and your body is trying to negotiate. Imagine, too, the patient record that holds weeks of your days. In the panel, actigraphy reveals interdaily stability, that index of how well your day-on-day rhythm aligns with itself. If it is high, your nights and days are more consistent. If it is lower, perhaps life's understandable rhythms are varied. Intradaily variability is a soft way of describing how your wakefulness and resting behavior is clustered. High variability can mean that movement bursts are scattered, like raindrops everywhere, rather than gathered rainstorms with clear sunshine between. Sometimes this suggests trying to condense activity into fewer, more defined periods and to keep rest more consolidated, like moving from scattered beads to a couple of strong strings. At this point, the night in the lab is half spent. You might feel that your body is floating deeper into the lake of sleep, where the water is warmer than you expected and the surface above is smooth and above you, not pressing. Float. It is okay to drift. The actigraph continues its quiet count, impartial and tender. Still awake, comment the secret word nebula. In the lab, a technician notes that the clocks remain aligned. The network time server's gentle sync happens in the background, adjusting drift that otherwise might turn minutes into mild confusion. The lab's systems consider daylight saving time, though tonight you do not notice that small human invention. For multi-week studies, analysts later ease these shifts across the data so that thresholds that define night and day still respect the way you live them. At the margins of these adjustments, they smooth like carpenters who sand the edge of an oaken shelf. You may never think about these details, and you don't need to. The work ensures that what you see and what you feel line up in a way that produces calm. An actigraph can sample movement many times every second. The raw data are a spray of tiny measurements. But to help humans understand, we gather them into counts, into epochs. The device might use a method that looks for how often it crosses a small line of motion called zero crossing, or it may integrate the absolute change in acceleration, or compute a vector magnitude that blends the three axes of motion. Each approach has personality, like three neighbors who count steps differently, but end up with similar totals by nightfall. In the morning, the numbers will be the material from which the shape of your sleep is woven, and the shape will tell a story that is not a drama, but a gentle documentary, a nature film for the small, quiet animal that is your resting self. Sometimes, though, there are disturbances a person hardly remembers. A noise outside, then gone. A shift in the hallway air. An unnoticed thought. The device will register a bump in counts. The algorithms will consider whether it stands alone or forms a cluster. If it stands alone and the minutes around it are still, the night remains sleep. The bump is seen as a physical twitch nested in rest. If the cluster spans several minutes and light rises, the analysis may log a bout of wakefulness. As even then, it will be seen as part of the larger pattern, a cove within a coastline. The point is not to label you restless, but to understand gently the places where your night asked for more softness. The gentle rhythm continues. Years of studies have compared these counts with the deeper measures, how brain waves change, how muscles relax, how breath intervals grow and shrink, how eyes move under closed lids. These comparisons built trust that actigraphy can reasonably estimate sleep over nights and weeks. It is more forgiving than full polysomnography, asking less of you. It is portable and quiet. It can go home with you and nap with you on a couch. It can learn how you sleep on weekends and how you sleep when deadlines become pebbles in your shoe. It can show that your nightly walk helps, or that the late caffeine is a sly visitor. It can turn the vague sense of rest into a gently graphed reality. You can imagine putting that graph on your fridge like a child's drawing of steady stars. Now you roll to the other side. Your wrist crosses your chest, and then it rests just beyond, and your fingers find your palm. The band shifts a little, and the buckle sighs against the sheet. Again, the device records that, and then listens for stillness. It is not offended by movement. It is curious. It means to understand. Its memory fills with items, the way a beach fills with shells overnight, the tide laying them down in lines that tell where the water crept, then stayed, then slipped back. If the band angle changes, the gravity projection onto the three sensors changes. The device adjusts for this in a plain mechanical way, not with human worry, but with the steady arithmetic of filters that remove the constant part of gravity so the small waverings become visible. Once, perhaps, a gentle bleep sounds from a console in another room as a system logs a completed checkpoint. The bleep is modest, like a bird clearing its throat in a far branch. It does not wake anyone. It is there to assure an empty room that its protections are in place. The devices are charging for tomorrow's studies. The network backup is healthy. The technician notes that the file sizes are growing at the expected pace. A small paper sign nearby reads, "Shh, night in progress." And someone has drawn a little crescent moon that smiles the way people draw moons in childhood. It has a softened cheek. Everything about it suggests that even the building is sleeping. You can sense the presence of time is weightless now. In sleep labs, time is not a ruler. It is water. It wraps around you. It carries you with a flow that requires no effort from your legs. If you wake briefly, it is like a small surface wave, and then you sink again into the warm middle. You might wake once and notice the color of the dark, which is not pure black but a soft sum of many small blues. You roll and it changes to deep green. Then you stop noticing. The actigraph notices faithfully, adding notations to a page you never see being written. Later, those notations will gently explain to someone who cares about you that you woke for 12 minutes around 2:20 in the morning, that you turned over twice at 3, that your still periods were long and comfortable, that your sleep efficiency tonight was strong. Or they will explain that your night was a little chopped, and perhaps light can be adjusted, or the time of your last meal moved forward, or a bit of breathing and gentle reading offered before bed. A sleep lab night with actigraphy is slow, but it is far from empty. It is filled with the small life of your body arranging its repair work. Imagine teeny factories that shut off their bright lamps and switch to quieter assembly lines meant to fold proteins, mend cells, file memories. In that quiet, the body chooses steadier heartbeats, longer breaths, a lowered temperature. Movement becomes a kind of punctuation instead of the main text. The actigraph keeps track of the punctuation marks, and from them, the analysts later read the paragraphs that sleep wrote for you. At times, the discussion of actigraphy moves toward parameters that can seem heavy when you are awake and studying. You can imagine those lines written in pale pencil. There is Cosinor analysis, which fits a cosine curve to your days and nights, showing your amplitude, how much your activity waxes and wanes, and phase, when your day tends to begin in motion and when your night drapes you. It is a simple, comforting wave. There are non-parametric approaches that say, let the data stand as they are, without forcing them into one wave. Let them be irregular and alive. They measure the stability day to day and the variability within a day with indexes that have calm equations behind them. But they surface with words that the body recognizes: steady or scattered, consolidated or pebbled. The gentle rhythm continues. Imagine the laboratory after sunrise, but not yet in the world. We are only peeking ahead. The device will be quietly connected to a cable or placed in a cradle that speaks to the computer. The data will scroll by in a language of numbers that the analyst reads fluently. They will nod slightly as they see expected patterns, the long stillness, the small cluster of movement near dawn when the body warms again and the urge to wake grows. They might overlay your night from Monday onto your night from Friday to compare. They will look for the first day you wore the device and will cross-check that the time zone changes were applied if you traveled. They will handle missing epochs if wireless sync faltered for a minute and then resumed. This care is not flashy. It is like a librarian checking the spines of books before placing them together on a shelf where future readers can find them easily. You drift again, deeper, and the room around you becomes like an anchor image that holds you comfortingly but does not claim your attention. You touch the blanket with your forearm, and the weave presses little even marks into your skin that fade as blood returns and skin recovers. Your mouth goes slightly open. Your knees adjust by a finger's width of space. All of these things the device listens to in the way levers listen to weight. It adds them. It will not chastise you for waking. If you wake at 3 and lie still, the actigraph will record that stillness. Later, the analysis may detect wake from the absence of movement only if it spans long minutes amid lighter patterns. Otherwise, it errs toward assuming that you were still asleep, which is kind. When diaries are used, you will note that you woke there, and the software will align your report with the motion trace to understand that sometimes wake is quiet. The night accepts this, and your page will be comfortingly complete. The device may also carry an event marker button, and your finger might press it once when the light goes out. A quick, tiny press. If you do, a little flag will appear in the data at that time. If you don't, the shifting light and the pattern of movement will still say that sleep began within a certain neighborhood of time. The lab software will iterate gently to find the combination that best reflects your night while keeping consistent rules. The staff here know that rules bring fairness, but they also know that nights are living things. So even with rules, there is interpretation that requires someone to look at the line and say, "This looks like you, not just like a model." Imagine waking early in the morning, not yet fully but enough to sense the difference in the air outside somewhere in the world. Early commuters begin to stir, but here in the lab, the floor remains softly untraveled. The devices that were waiting in their dock remain in stillness. The technician warms their hands around a mug again and watches a monitor that changes colors with time, not with urgency. They think gently about the participants whose data will help. The lab feels like a lighthouse, whose light is not a beam, but a steady haze, visible most when you are close. Your actigraph cares about days, not just nights. It is most powerful over weeks, when it shows whether your rhythm is aligned with your duties and what your body desires. Sometimes, when your work asked you to be awake at times you would rather sleep, actigraphy shows the yawning gap between your rhythm's preferred night and your actual night. This is not blame, it is clarity, the kind that helps people plan small steps to ease the mismatch. Perhaps you draw your curtains at bedtime and choose warm light to convince your inner clock a gentle night has arrived. Perhaps you open those curtains wide in the morning to let the sky set your day's pace. Actigraphy watches before and after, then shows whether the gentle changes stick. Over days, one can compute a metric called L, the average activity during the quietest 5 hours of your day, and M10, the average activity during the most active 10 hours. These describe your valley and your plateau. High separation between them means your day and night are distinct. This often feels good. If they blend too much, the difference between day and night becomes smudged, and rest can become less restorative. The names are technical, but the feeling they track is familiar. Seeing the numbers helps you gently evaluate your environment. Sometimes you find that late evening routines include standing, walking, and bright screens. You might then choose to reshape those hours into something like tea, reading, dimmer light, and a conversation that winds down. And later, the actigraph will show your valley deepening. In the lab story, there are people who love the small problems that need solving. They ensure that when a participant scratches their head and the actigraph counts it, the software doesn't mistake a small cluster of such movements for a significant wake event unless it truly is. They consider how to detect when the device was taken off, not only from zeros, but from the pattern of light and temperature that says the wrist was absent. They design ways to align the clock in the device with the global time, so that people who travel from one time zone to another can be seen as they live now, not as they used to. They write code that chooses the most considerate defaults, then gives analysts the chance to override them with a human eye. Little by little, this care seeps into the night as kindness felt but not shouted. The quiet count, the small arithmetic of movement, continues to be patient with you. Imagine its timeline as a long ribbon curling on the table. Near the beginning, there are higher counts as you prepared for bed. A taper takes hold as you settled. A plateau of low counts stretches through the majority of the night, with small introduces of motion that quickly fall away. Toward morning, the counts begin to stir again as your internal clock warms and your hormones begin their dawn choreography. You do not need to feel any of this. You can sleep through it. The device notices it as a line that gently rises. Some labs compare the actigraphy estimates with the participants' own impressions. After each morning, a small prompt might ask, "How well did you sleep and how long did you feel you slept?" Some people underestimate or overestimate, which is part of being human. Seeing those impressions alongside the traces can be comforting. It begins to build a bridge between feeling and measurement, so you can better listen to your own signals. Over weeks, the two stories often draw closer together. When the tests a new device, they might place it on a shaker that moves in known patterns. They calibrate it to ensure that counts correspond as expected to known accelerations. They keep logs of battery life and check that sampling rates remain stable. They place devices on a shelf next to a calibrated light source so that the light sensors remain honest. The care exists in the background, the way the care of a gardener exists in the background of a peaceful garden. You see flowers. The work that made them reliable thrives quietly in the soil. You turn in your sleep and the sheet cools your knee, then warms again under it. Your breath has little variations that the lab equipment next door can detect in detail when those sensors are warned. But tonight, actigraphy tells enough of the story. You're mostly resting, and when you move, your movements are gentle and brief. The algorithm is content to label these minutes as sleep. The night's core remains unbroken. The gentle rhythm continues. When someone uses actigraphy at home, they sometimes wear it on their non-dominant wrist. This reduces the influence of daytime tasks on the counts. In the lab, one wrist is enough. Sometimes they place bands on both wrists or add one to the ankle, more as a study-specific choice. Over days, the device remains with you through showers if it is waterproof, or rests for those minutes if it is not. Taken off for a few minutes, it waits, and when it returns to listening. It is not like an exercise tracker that scolds. It is a quiet observer that simply builds a record. There is a comfort in that. And if, with time, you decide you prefer routines that are different, the device will not judge. It will shift with you and keep walking gently alongside. Among the gentle mathematics that comes later, one can compute sleep regularity, a number that describes how often across days you are asleep at the same hours. The more consistent you are, the higher the score. This is not a moral scale. It is a practical one, particularly comforting to those who feel better when their bodies expect what happens next. If you work irregular shifts, the number might dip, and you can use this knowledge to carve quiet islands of routine within the variability. The goal is to make your body feel like it can predict and therefore relax into what each hour will likely bring. The staff also think about artifacts, not in the museum sense, but in the data sense. Moments when a jolt occurs because a door was bumped or a cable brushed the device. They learn to notice these because they look like spikes or sudden, impossible edges. They are patient when cleaning them, using rules that keep the data whole while removing the impossible. They do it with a light touch so that your true movements are preserved. The result is a trace that feels as genuine as your night. Within this environment, the cleaning and analysis have a cadence. Files are read, windows are applied, thresholds are tested with small variations, and graphs are generated. The analyst often prints one, pins it softly to a board with other nights, and steps back. They look for a form that represents not only the sweet aim of a good stage-managed sleep lab night, but the real flow of your own circadian pulse. Perhaps they compare weekend data to the midweek pattern and note the shift. Perhaps they show you where you fall in relation to your hoped schedule. They do this with a counseling manner, not a correcting one. In the end, the actigraph is a mirror that offers information with kindness. Now, imagine the last hour before dawn in our lab. The darkness is less dark, the instruments are the same, and the band is still present as if it has become a small wrist bone. The technician changes a note on the board, a motion that makes an almost silent whisper. The plant in the corner seems no different, but there is a sense that the room is exhaling. You may turn and sigh, and the device counts it lightly, then returns to its quiet record. In these mid-haunts, your stillness is lighter. Your body prepares for morning by lifting your temperature a few tenths of a degree. Your breath quickens, not by much. Your heart beats a little faster. The counts may rise slightly as you find a new angle or smooth the blanket. All of these are natural. The device writes them as part of the consistent story. When wake arrives, perhaps you open your eyes slowly and look at the dim room that is patient with you. Perhaps you do not get up immediately. Your hand comes up to shade your eyes from a light that is gentle anyway. The device counts your first reach. You sit up and the counts rise. The algorithm marks the end of the sleep interval. If you press the event marker to signal morning, it adds another flag. A staff member may speak to you in the kind of voice people use with babies and elderly people, respectful and soft, and offer water. You stand. Your weight shifts to your right foot. The counts celebrate the day, gently returning. If this were a multi-night study, the staff might ask you to keep wearing the device and to return to your routine, and they would look forward to your day's data, particularly the anchor points. When you see morning light, when you have meals, when you take quiet breaks. These things tie your circadian rhythm to the world. The device recognizes them only through motion and light, and yet the pattern is meaningful. When you return later, the data will build a story of your week. Over time, people who use actigraphy learn to respect their patterns without anxiety. They might write a little sentence in the morning to go with the data, like a caption under a photograph. They might find that the most restful nights are the ones with a clean slope into sleep, less light and fewer bright tasks before bed. They might find that a consistent wake time is a firm stone in the river that helps the rest of the stepping stones feel placed. They might learn that naps are helpful when kept brief and early, something the device shows by painting small midday dips that do not bleed into the night. From a technical perspective, the pipelines that transform the raw accelerometer readings into counts and sleep-wake labels exist in a gentle sequence. Sync clocks, detect and wear, compute features, apply algorithms, compute summary metrics, produce plots. Each step is simple on its own. Together they form a steady procession that moves without drama. The programming languages used take care to read files that grew overnight from hundreds of kilobytes to a few megabytes. And in that growth, the story of your night is held. Code, written by someone who cares about smooth corners, handles daylight saving adjustments and leap seconds and peculiarities of time zones. In a way, this tenderness with time is an extension of the tenderness with sleep. There is something special about measuring sleep with a device so unintrusive. It respects the fact that sleep is more like a tide than a switch. Wearable sensors let us watch the tide come in and go out indulgently without diving into the water to put buoys on every fish. The more you watch, the more you learn. The more days become pages, the more nights fill in the calendar, the clearer the shorelines are. Across a month, you can see the fingerprint of your life, the weeks of long studying, the easy weekends, the travel days, the restful break you took. Less becomes a question, more becomes a gentle answer. The gentle rhythm continues. The staff in the lab will eventually pack away tonight's cables. They will peel the signs off the doors that frame the night and greet the morning staff with a soft exchange. They will transfer the files to a place where they will be safe, with a checksum to prove later that nothing was lost. They will label the folder with your participant ID in careful letters. They will clean the devices with a solution that smells faintly like a hospital's polite corner, and then set them on a tray like cutlery set for a dinner where quiet is the guest of honor. They will rest at home in the day, and the cycle will continue. In some studies, actigraphy is combined with other calm measures. A small drop of blood collected at earlier times might help track melatonin's to quiet rise in dim light, indicating the time your internal night begins, known as dim light melatonin onset. This helps align the actigraphy curve to your internal clock with more precision for a night or two. But for most people, actigraphy alone suffices to see the arc of behavior and to line it up with light. Over the long term, this alignment helps you become kind to your own biology, even as you meet the day's needs. Imagine again for a final time the device on your wrist as the light of morning extends into the lab. You remove it as a staff member smiles. Your skin under the band has a faint, shallow line that fades in moments. The device, light as it is, looks not the least bit tired. It has captured the story it was designed to capture without ever intruding on your sleep. Later, when you see the graph, you will recognize the long quiet. You will perhaps remember the small wake you had for a minute. You will sense your own rhythm in lines and numbers that are more like calligraphy than accounting. If you took this device home, perhaps you would wear it for 2 weeks and then return it. Perhaps you would receive a small report that says your nights begin a little later than you wish, and that your mornings are slow because of that. Or perhaps it would affirm that your pattern fits you. The report would be gentle, making suggestions you can share with someone in your life who wants you to feel rested. The device whispers in the only language it knows that the body prefers regular light, gentle evenings, and respect for that quiet count. It whispers that sleep is something you can practice with kindness. In this lab, overlain by the patience of the people and the patience of the devices, the night was never in a hurry. The press of time softened. You were free to let your thoughts splay like the threads of a loose weave, knowing that the gentle machinery of data would hold the shape without needing you to attend to it. That is the design of actigraphy. It is science made soft enough to slip into the night and reemerge with a story you can hold without fear or strain. Now that your breath is steady and your muscles are warm with the simple heat of a body that is okay, return lightly to the present. You are safe here. The room that held our story returns to its quiet. The actigraph rests in its cradle, its memory full of slow, ordinary heroism, sleep. If this calm journey helped you drift, we're glad. If you're not yet asleep and want to keep floating on this tranquil tide, feel free to browse the playlist in the description and let the next quiet story carry you. When you wake, if you found comfort here, consider subscribing and leaving a like so we can keep bringing you these soft, steady explorations. Rest well, and may your own nights be easy, regular, and guided by the simple rhythm of the quiet count.